Hi, Anthony Smith here, COO of EMF Safe. We are the American manufacturers of the UL listed EMF Safe Switch. Dan Everson, our CEO, is the inventor of the original EMF kill switch, the EMF sleep switch, and now in its present form, the EMF Safe Switch. This is a remote cutoff device for your home that allows you to switch off unwanted EMF, allowing you to create an EMF mitigated sleep sanctuary. We empower you to safely switch off and be in control of the EMF in your home. Welcome to the Experts Interview Series. Enjoy. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Nicole Shorrock, MD, and these initials after her name, IFMCP. And for those that, like me, weren't familiar with what those mean, it's the Institute for Functional Medicine Certified Practitioner, and we can touch on that later. Dr. Nicole has a BS in microbiology and molecular genetics from UCLA. She graduated with honors from University of California, Davis Medical School before specializing in pediatrics at the Children's Hospital in Denver, Colorado. After her pediatric residency, she returned home to El Dorado County to practice general pediatrics and begin her real training as a mother to her 4 children. As a parent of 3, I completely relate to that. Isn't that true? Wow.
Yeah.
So with a decade of practice under her belt, she became progressively dissatisfied with her conventional medical training and pharmaceutical heavy care plans. And she was the 3rd pediatrician in the country to become certified in functional medicine through the Institute for Functional Medicine, and now enjoys caring for both children and adults using her functional medical training. And over the past 10 years, she's focused on holistic healing of chronic diseases and has a special interest in recovering patients from autoimmunity and neurological conditions. So Dr. Nicole, it is a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for your time. I know it's very precious. And so 10 years of traditional medicine, 10 years of holistic, environmental, kind of more preventative. That's a big switch. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as you mentioned, I was progressively more frustrated with not really having tools to help my pediatric patients at the time with any kind of chronic conditions. But actually what catapulted me into functional medicine was that my husband became ill and was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I think we were in our 30s at that point. I thought he was perfectly healthy. That's how in tune I was at the point, from my conventional training. And what I realized is that he wasn't. And also I realized that conventional medicine's approach to suppress the immune response was not something that resonated with us. And we started looking for the root causes. And I'm happy to say that it's 12 years later and he is fully recovered. I would say, remission, cured, I'm not sure what the word is there, but, they were predicting that he would be wheelchair bound within 5 years because he had a progressive type. And as I went through that process, I learned about what I believe is to be real, true medicine and identifying the underlying conditions in the body that gave him the autoimmune disease to his nervous system. Yeah,
congratulations in those results. That's amazing and does give a lot of people hope. So environmental, holistic, environmental, preventative, environmental factors are all important. Chemical, mold, there's all kinds of stress factors. Our conversation today, I would like to kind of lean in the directions of how EMF in our environment, our homes and our environment, are one of the contributing factors. Because it may come as a big surprise to many people that EMF is even on that list as an environmental factor. How important, in your experience, would you say EMF is on those list of factors?
Yeah, so probably number 1 or number 2 And I alter those because I do think that if the nervous system has not had a trauma or any kind of traumatic experience, or there's zero stress, it can tolerate a lot. But I think that EMF is probably number one in terms of something that's very important to make sure is not in the environment when we're trying to recover any chronic condition in the body. What I'm realizing is that there's the direct effect of the current on the nervous system, but there is also the effect of the current on the microorganisms in the body. And, you know, in functional medicine, we really appreciate the microbiome and the importance of the microbiome. And the microbiome is what makes up all of our, it is the bacteria, fungus, viruses, parasite. I mean, it's a lot of different types of organisms that's in our body that have metabolic functions that keep us healthy. And when I mentioned, or you mentioned, that I have a degree in genetics, and in the early 2000, late 90s, we sequenced the genome, and we thought, oh, we're going to find all these genes for the human being, and it's going to be so great. We're going to understand so much. And then we sequenced the genome, and we found that we have fewer genes than a fruit fly. And we're like, wait a second, we're really complicated. And how is it that we have so little genetic material that's active? Because, you know, so many microorganisms in our body are metabolically active and a part of our health and our vitality. And when they're pulsed with electromagnetic fields, they get sick, they make toxins, they don't function. So there's a whole nother level of like how that ends up in the body, but like inflammatory bowel disease, or other, you know, food allergies, food sensitivities, chronic IBS or irritable bowel, diarrhea, constipation. We have, there's so many cases that we experience as physicians where, you know, when we discovered the EMF exposure in the patient and removed it, that the patient recovered. And I think it's a really telling that no one who works in my office has not created a sleep sanctuary or has actually done the work in their own homes, because we've witnessed what a big player it is in our patients.
Before we head off in that direction, it just occurs to me that some people may not know what EMF is. So it's electromagnetic fields, which includes electric fields, which is every wire in your home, every device that's plugged in is putting out an electric field, and it goes out 6 to 8 feet in all directions, and it goes through walls, floors, and ceilings. So that's the electric field. Then you've got magnetic fields. Every time you've got a spinning motor, a hairdryer, and anything with a motor in it, a fan, is throwing out a magnetic field. And you get magnetic fields also off of transmission lines and things like that, which can be quite devastating. And then another aspect of this is radio frequency, which many people are familiar with as far as radio television signals. And of course, today we've got cell phone signals, microwave, which is very, very damaging. And an aspect of that is dirty electricity, which is kind of a factor of all of those. So, and also, I should have said at the very beginning, we're not giving anybody medical advice. We're just having a friendly conversation here. And if you need medical advice, you should, call a doctor. We're just sharing information here for educational purposes. So, so that being said, I said it may come as a surprise to a lot of people that electromagnetic fields are even on that list of factors. Then there's a group of people who are very familiar with microwave from cell phone towers and things like that. Can you address maybe in your experience either the difference between the electric, the magnetic, the radio frequency, or do you see them all as being equally impacting and accumulative? And you can't just take one out and address that and think that you're dealing with it.
My thoughts on that is that it's about the amount of exposure and what the body can handle. So, you know, it depends on what body is coming to this exposure and how it's already, where is its source of vitality and resilience, and then how much exposure of the electric or the microwave or the magnetic fields that there are, because and that is the bell curve, you know, the area under the curve which is how much time, but it's also how high and how intense. And so I think that, now I say this a lot, I'm not the house doctor, I'm the patient doctor. So I focus on the body and I see the effect. And I definitely see an effect when it's removed. You know, the environment where we sleep is a very important environment because we spend so much time in our beds. And if that area has an electric current or a magnetic field, that will definitely create chronic illness and also prevent recovery from chronic illness, even if you're doing all kinds of other things, because it's several hours. But if I was sitting maybe next to or blow dry my hair for 10 minutes, you know, twice a week, maybe that exposure is something that is more manageable, right, for my body, and not something that I need to maybe put the resources in to figure out how to do it differently. I'm constantly asking that question because, you know, we take care of a lot of families, and you know, you have 3 kids. We're busy. We have to figure out what's priority and where do the resources go. And I think hands down, Sleep Sanctuary is the number one thing that needs to be created as far as creating healthy house or healthy home environment and allow the nervous system to fully recover at night. The other thing that's happening at night too is that it's when the brain detoxifies, you know, that we are just learning that the nervous system and the brain has a lymphatic system of its own, that when you're sleeping and when you're in certain phases of sleep that are often disrupted by electric or magnetic or Wi-Fi, your brain naturally kind of goes into like a detox mode and shrinks down and literally wrings itself out and lets go of all kinds of stuff that was accumulated during the day and during the exposure. And that's recovery. And if that's not happening, then the nervous system can't recover. So I think as far as importance, it's hard for me to separate out electric, magnetic. I think they're all bad players, and creating a room or how much time you spend in that is very important. So the Sleep Sanctuary has a big return on your investment, meaning you put effort into creating a healthy environment and you have a strong return on that in your health and your vitality.
As everybody knows, it's 24 hours in a day. But when it comes to, it's my understanding that when it comes to EMF mitigation, we are, because of all the things that you've just mentioned, the things that are going on at night, we're actually, to all intents and purposes, 10 times more sensitive to those factors at night. So if you are only going to mitigate for part of the day, that those nighttime hours are you get a much bigger return. Absolutely. And there is that is a time when, of course, we can turn off most things and reduce that electromagnetic field that we're exposed to. We may not have a whole lot of control when we're out and about at work and you know, shopping and doing our things outside, but we do have control over our home environment. And the one time that it's easiest to control those levels of EMF is at night, because that's when we really don't need that much on. And what's fortunate is that you get the biggest return in the Sleep Sanctuary. So I'm glad. It's interesting that you've you've noticed that too.
Yeah, I've seen it clinically too, even with little babies. You know, there's this trend to do video monitoring of the babies, and we have seen babies have food allergies, chronic eczema, colic, you know, and you just turn the monitor off, create the Sleep Sanctuary for the infant, and everything dissolves. I mean, it's wow. Really like, whoa, okay, that was really mediating all of that. But I think there's, and the awareness is improving, but we just want to keep increasing that awareness because well, how cool is it that we can watch our baby on a video in the middle of the night while they're sleeping? But nobody's thinking about these devices and like how they, you know, the wearable devices or the owlet that they put on the baby, you know, to monitor their heart rate and pulse.
Yeah, people don't realize because, you know, we actually sell a little pen that picks up electric fields, and you get within 2 to 3 feet of a baby monitor, which of course you've got the electric field and then you've got the radio frequency as well. So you've got two things going on there. But you know, you come up to a toaster or a coffee pot and it goes beep, beep, beep. And it lets you hear and see and be aware of the fields. And once people, it's like the biome, you know, we everybody's aware of bacteria, but we don't worry about it. We wash our hands, we wipe down counters, we cook our food, and life goes on. And I think we need to get to that level of awareness with EMF, where we're learning to metaphorically wash our hands of EMF and just live our lives. And there are many things, there's a lot of things we do not have control over in this world, but there's actually lots of things that we do, and we need to take advantage of those times. So every person's situation is different, but you mentioned earlier that you've, you know, unless there was an actual stress event, the EMF is probably one of the most important things for people to get under control, that they would see the biggest results from.
Yeah, so much so. I mean, there are some of the physicians in our field that make it kind of a necessary thing before they'll even start treatment, because if a patient is living in this exposure, you could throw the kitchen sink at the condition with medications and lifestyle modifications and things, and have very little recovery. Wow.
So all of the other things that you can help people with. So we actually call it the elephant in the room. So lots of people are
that nobody can see and nobody knows is in there.
Yeah, the E of EMF. E of EMF is the elephant in the room, is the electric field, and it's actually one of the easiest things for us to fix and to take care of. One story I'm reminded of is you know, during the power outages last year or the year before in California, people with spectrum children having a week without EMF, they noticed a dramatic improvement. We actually sold an EMF safe switch to a family. They had a 5-year-old autistic child, and the child hadn't spoken at all for 5 years. And within 1 week of getting a sleep sanctuary and having, you know, those 8 hours, I mean, they were still exposed to electricity during the day, but at night they had a sleep sanctuary, and within 1 week that child started talking. I mean, that's,
yes, it's incredible.
Why we do what we do.
That's like one of our very beginning steps in our recovery program, is we ask our patients to do a hack, so to speak, of their home and their environment by turning off the power when they're sleeping. I think it's great if you could do it 24 hours, but that's not normally reality. We do need these things that are powered, and see how, and I don't think I actually know anyone where they didn't notice it. You know, like it's really a powerful intervention, and people feel better, but they don't know that they don't feel good from it because they're constantly in it until you take it and you turn it all the way off, you know, which,
right.
You know, I think that's very important. And so if anybody is wondering, I think that's a great way to start, you know, turning off the power to your bedroom when you're sleeping, and also putting all of your devices and your Wi-Fi off.
Absolutely.
I noticed that when I first did this, for my own body, like I never used to notice that I was in an electric field or in Wi-Fi. But then once you start living out of it, then you sense it when you go in it, you know. So I was at someone's house and I thought they had it all turned off, but I could feel it in the body when I was trying to go to sleep. And so I got up and asked, is this still on? Oh, I forgot to turn it off. And I'm like, yep, I can tell. And I knew the moment it turned off, I could feel it in my body. So you can develop that intelligence again and being aware of it when you don't live in it all the time. But when the exposure is all the time, we just adjust.
Yeah, people, you know, they go to the beach and they feel better, and they don't, they attribute that to the fresh air, the you know, the sound of the waves, all of which are wonderful things, but they don't never equate to the lack of EMF in that environment. We live not too far from the redwoods, and you know, going to the redwoods, they shield the EMF, but also go hug a tree, and how much better do you feel? I mean, literally, yes. and physiological, there's actually a lot of benefit to that, of grounding out our bodies act as antennas, and they also act as capacitors, which means they will actually hold electricity. So going out into the garden, getting your bare feet in the dirt, getting your hands in, doing some gardening, that sort of thing. And people do feel better, but they don't equate it to the lack of EMF and getting rid of all of that toxic energy. Now, you do energy work in your practice. I'm not sure what it's called.
Lots of different types.
Frequency specific microcurrent. Now
Yeah.
that is EMF. So
Yes.
not all EMF, and this is something I wanted to bring up, especially with you, because not all EMF is bad. Some of it can be very healing. Some frequencies are very beneficial and can be used for healing, whereas other frequencies are extremely damaging. So maybe you could address that.
Yeah, so we're taught that in medicine too, everything at the right dose can be either, or the wrong dose, can either be a medicine or a toxin. And that's really important. Antioxidants, everybody thinks, oh, antioxidants, they're so good for you, right? But what they are, they're actually poisons that stimulate your body to create an oxidative response that to heal and makes your body make the antioxidants. So this is frequency specific microcurrent is basically like what I would consider homeopathic dosing of a magnetic field or electric, depending on how you're using the machine. But and everything in nature has a frequency, and those frequencies are known. And are becoming known as we explore them. But you can use those frequencies therapeutically in the body. Probably one of the most, and we use a lot of brain recovery frequencies. There's a frequency for nerve, there's a frequency for myelin, there's a frequency for your vagus. And when you pair the frequencies, it sends the current in that frequency, and it resonates with that frequency in that cell, and basically through resonation, I don't know if that's the right word, it stimulates that in the person's body. So it's pretty incredible. We also use it to treat chronic infections like viruses, like shingles is a really common one. It works amazing for shingles. But it's not specific, it's very specific current. It's for a specific amount of time. We would never want to live in that frequency, that then it would become a poison.
So those specific frequencies are causing a positive harmonic and a positive response.
Yes.
They're actually feeding energy to that particular thing within the body.
Yes.
So some of these man-made frequencies cause a disharmony. So they can actually, that vibration, that frequency can actually not support the body, but actually cause it to break down. And I think at a cellular level, and I know especially with the biome, which 80-90% of our health comes from the biome in our digestive systems, they are even more sensitive, from my understanding, is more sensitive to EMF than our own genome is. But that there are certain frequencies, man-made frequencies, that will actually cause a disharmony and cause certain functions and to break down. And so maybe people can relate to it in those respects and think of sound.
Absolutely. I think or we're just going to say we're having like an epidemic of nervous system conditions, mental health conditions, depression, anxiety, ADHD. These are diagnoses that are just really skyrocketed in the country. And I know there's several players to that, but our microbiome is very intimately related to our mental health or to our brain health. And these frequencies are either going to support a healthy microbiome or harm. And at the dose that they are in the homes and in what we're seeing with the dirty electricity and the magnetic fields and the Wi-Fi, those are all harmful. They're like 1,000,000 times stronger than what we would use for a healing frequency in the FSM.
So as a doctor who has seen probably thousands of patients. And unfortunately, most of the people that are coming to see you already are sick. They have a problem.
Mhm.
And now you've, the last 10 years of your medical practice, you're leaning more towards the preventative. What piece of advice could you give to those people that are listening so that they don't have to come and see you?
Well, I mean, that's such a global question, but, and I
Sure.
do say that everything is individualized in real practice of medicine, but EMF is global. So living in it where you live and your home and the health of that home is either going to support you in your recovery and your vitality, or it's going to prevent you from recovering. And so many of the patients are living in electric fields. They don't know it, or they have even worse, magnetic situations in their bedroom where they're in that magnetic field all night. We've had patients who've been pretty sick, who've had power lines that were under their house that they didn't know, that their home was in a magnetic field from a power line, or the Wi-Fi. So what I would say is investigate that. I think you need to have somebody come test the home most of the time, because you need to know where these fields are. I mean, they're invisible, the elephant in the living room that you cannot see, and having the testing so that we know exactly what is needed, so we can do the right individualized recovery of that space is what I would recommend. I would recommend that everyone have a building biologist check their home. And we do. I mean, that's what we do with our patients. In fact, it's expensive to see the doctor, and it's even more expensive to see functional or integrative physicians, because we are not part of the system. So if somebody can mediate that EMF, then you see what's next. And a lot of times there's such significant recovery just with that step alone.
For those that are listening to the experts interview series, and then maybe this is your first interview, check out the others. Four of the other interviews I've already done are with building biologists and EMF consultants. Some of them have been in the business for 20, 30 years and have some very expensive equipment. They have a lot of knowledge. They know what to look for. And having somebody like that to come out, just like you'd go to a doctor and get a diagnosis, you can have a house doctor come out and diagnose your home, which is what building biologists do. And, if you are in an area where you can't, maybe there isn't anybody there. I spoke to somebody yesterday, and they didn't have anybody within 2 or 3 hours, and they weren't willing to make the drive at this particular time. So we do have a body voltage meter, and at least you can find out which circuits in your bedroom are affecting you. And people think maybe there's only one, but there can be 5 or 6 hidden wires going somewhere else in the house that all need to be turned off to create a sleep sanctuary environment.
A lot of the sick building issues have to do with the microbiome of the home, and EMF is very much a piece of that, because mold and other probable organisms grow in homes, especially when they aren't ventilating well. And a lot of our buildings, they're not really built the way they used to be, and they don't ventilate very well.
Right.
So often families or patients are getting sick from the toxins that are being made by that mold. And when they studied that, and they looked at mold growing in a building with 0 EMF exposure, and then they looked at mold growing in a home with conventional regular EMF exposure, the toxins increased 600-fold every hour, because the mold that's getting exposed to these, the mold that's being exposed to the EMF in the house it's a threat to that mold. And so, I mean, what the mold does is it makes toxin, because it seems like something's trying to kill me. This dirty electric current is trying to kill me. The Wi-Fi is trying to kill me. And so it makes more and more toxin. And all that toxin is in the house. It has to be navigated, through our bodies. And when it can't get through, it makes us sick. So mold toxin illness is a very common condition that we see in integrative and functional medicine. And EMF is a huge, even if you can't get out of a moldy house, you can stop the current going to the mold that's in the house, which will help not only your body and your microbiome, but also your home's microbiome be less toxic, less toxin producing.
Well, I love learning something new, and I didn't know that. It's a little depressing that the mold in our homes is more intelligent than we are.
I know, right?
and is doing something about this condition that many of us are not doing ourselves, but the mold is. It's kind of like
it's trying, it's spitting out toxin, except the toxin's not killing the EMF. Unfortunately, it's just killing the people living in the house. Yeah.
Smart
that's
mold.
A really big player, because we see a lot of mold illness in our practice too, and sometimes patients cannot get out of that home. I mean, it's their house.
Sure.
They can't fix it. It can be really expensive. So I do think EMF is still number one. 600 times more toxin an hour in the current compared to not in the current. That was the study that they did. It's really impressive.
Wow. So in summary, what I'm hearing you say throughout this interview, and again, thank you very much for your time, which I know is very precious, that if there's obviously, without sitting down and diagnosing somebody and looking at their chart and everything, just for the people listening, as a piece of not medical advice, but friendly information, EMF would probably, except obviously there's unusual, bizarre situations like, living close to a toxic dump or something, but for 99% of the people out there, the number one thing, your advice as 20 years of medical practice would be to create a sleep sanctuary. Would that be fair enough to say?
Yes. And turn off the Wi-Fi.
Yes. Well, one thing we recommend people do once they measure their bedroom, even if their game room, the TV with smart TV with the Bluetooth, to include that circuit into when you turn off the circuits at night, even though there may not be a direct effect from electric fields because that wire is not running through your bedroom, but to include that in the switch off so that we have like 4 zones that you can do, and you turn off the game room with the smart TV and the Wi-Fi, or the home office, and so you are again adding to the significantly increasing the reduction of not just electric field. Nice thing is when you turn off the circuits, you're killing the electric field and the magnetic field and the dirty electricity and any radio frequency that is associated with any of those circuits. So it's and that is again something. There's 2 approaches. One is to leave the house on and turn off the bedroom at night. The other holistic approach, which many people are beginning to do now, is they actually keep their house turned off. And then with the zone system, they actually only turn on that part of the house which they're going to go into when they need to be there. So their overall background during the daytime, their overall level is greatly reduced. And just from the mold point of view alone, just to have the overall level down all the time could be a great way maybe to recoup and recover if somebody unfortunately finds themselves in a situation like that. So I'd like to ask everybody to click the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel so more people can gets us up in the algorithm and more people can benefit from hearing this wonderful 20 years of experience from Dr. Nicole. Thank you, Dr. Nicole, for sharing.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
We appreciate your time and being willing to share and help everybody with all the things that you've learned.
Thank you for having me. This is such an important piece of the puzzle of our health and our vitality in this time. And I just think the more people who understand it and know it and can empower them to take care of themselves and to be the best them that they can be. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.